In this video, we're going to cover how to assemble the WHEELTOP EDS TX gear system on your bike. Now, whether you're going to put on hydraulic or rim brake, the principles are very much the same. Hydraulic's a little bit more complicated in that you've got to bleed the system with your hydraulic fluid, whereas the rim brake version is very straightforward. So hopefully you get some handy hints out of this video to help you on your way. In the next video to follow, which will be very close, I'll be doing a test ride and review, and hopefully by then I would have done at least 20 rides on it and give you a good balanced overview of how we can view this WHEELTOP EDS gear system. So we have our WHEELTOP EDS TX gear system, and it's going on this bike, the Yolio R12. Because the WHEELTOP system is so adaptable to either a disc brake bike, a rim brake bike, any number of gears you want to have on your bike, and what sort of components you have on your bike, it'll pretty much integrate with them as well. So rather than try and cover every aspect of build on whatever sort of bike we can, the video will be too long. We're going to just concentrate on disc brake bike, and if you've got a rim brake bike, the principles are pretty much the same. Now, this is a disc brake bike, and it's also got integrated cables. So both your brake and the gear cables are going through the handlebar, through the stem, and down through the frame and the fork. Now, we won't have to worry about gear cables. They're all going to disappear. But the two brake cables, the front and the rear, being integrated, there's only so much brake hose we can spare in length before it starts to get too tight and affect the steering. If your brake cables are not integrated, they're down here on the outside, and chances are you'll be fine. You've got plenty of length to spare. Okay, let's start. For your existing rear derailleur, cut the inner cable, pull off the outer cable from the adjusting barrel, and unscrew the derailleur from the mounting bolt. For your existing front derailleur, cut the inner cable or undo the cable anchor bolt, then undo the derailleur mounting bolt. To remove your current shifters, you'll need to undo your handlebar tape. Peel back the hoods and completely remove all the bar tape, both left and right side. Paddle the right shifter so you can see the gear inner cable head through the access hole. Then completely pull out the inner cable. Do the same with the left shifter. As a reference to the position of your shifters on the bar, mark either side of the shifter clamps. If the clamps slide away, or you wish to replace these previous clamps with new ones like the WHEELTOP ones, you have a guide to the exact position. If you wish to use your previous clamps on the new WHEELTOP levers, you can do so, which is what I will be doing. Before undoing the hydraulic hoses, have a rag on hand to quickly wipe up any brake fluid spillage. Undo the fixing nut and then directly pull out the hose from the shifter, then do exactly the same to the other shifter. If your previous shifters were Shimano, you'll need to fit the WHEELTOP barb and olives to the hose ends. Shimano ones will not fit the WHEELTOP shifters. And if you're going to use your existing hoses, it will mean cutting off the Shimano barb and olive, which will shorten your hose by 15mm. Do the same for both hoses, and remove the previous fixing nuts. 5mm Allen key, and you can remove the shifters and leave the shifter clamp on the handlebar. So now you have the choice. You can either use your previous Shimano clamp or you can use the new WHEELTOP bar clamp. They're both interchangeable. The same 5mm Allen key into the WHEELTOP shifter and mount the WHEELTOP shifter onto the handlebar. And repeat for the left hand side. Now pull your gear outers out if you can. But chances are if you've got integrated bars you can't do it because it goes around so many corners. So you're going to have to take off the head stem, the handlebars, the whole lot from the steerer and pull your cables out from there. So that's why if you've got the gear cables and that on the outside, it's a lot easier. Hold your forks to the frame. Here I'm using a pedal strap and a rag so the buckle from the strap doesn't scratch the frame, because when your stem is released from the fork steerer, the forks may drop down. Undo the stem clamp bolts and then the top cap bolt. And now carefully remove the stem from the fork steerer. Time to remove the gear outers from the handlebars. First try pushing some of the outer into the handlebar and try pulling them at the stem. Make sure you're pulling gear outer and not brake hose. And repeat for the other side. Pulling the front derailleur cable through the frame and out through the bottom bracket. And the rear gear outer through the rear stay. At this stage you've got to determine, have you got enough hydraulic hose to reach that 15mm extra. Pull back the lever hood and have a look where the hydraulic hose has to go in the lever, and then pull your hose through and see if you can get close enough to. With this apart, by the time we put it back together, we'll probably get another 5mm out of that, so we're getting pretty close. I reckon we can do it. If you can't pull much more hose through on yours, and your hydraulic hose is already in a straight direct line, especially up your forks, you just can't get any more through, and your headset's back together even, and you still can't get some through, well, you're going to have to replace your hoses. Hopefully you don't have to. Now, another thing while you're at this stage with your headset, it's apart, you could take the opportunity to clean your top and bottom bearings and re-grease them. So basically a service, and put them all back together. Take the opportunity while you've got it all apart. Now the other opportunity you can take is if your bearings really need replacing. If they really need replacing, then you are going to have to take your hydraulic hoses out and probably replace them with new ones. So while they're out, replace your bearings, put everything back together, big thing. But if you can just clean and re-grease your bearings and you think that's fine, then do it while you've got it apart. Once you're sure about your headset area, you don't have to worry about gear cables anymore. Put your stem back on your fork steerer. Top cap back on, but don't do your stem bolts up yet. Okay, so now you've got your headset all fixed up, your stem's back on. It doesn't have to be tight yet, don't worry about that, as long as it's in position, that's the main thing. Now just check, make sure, just peel back the lever hood, if it's not already peeled back, and pull a little bit on your hydraulic hose, make sure you've got enough there, and then same with the other side. Then swivel the handlebars all the way around, and make sure that the hoses aren't pulling back. Make sure you've got enough, even though at the extremity, your handlebar at the extremity, that you've got enough hose there, and it's not going to pull on the hydraulic line on the lever. So that should be fine. Time to see how your new wheel top shifters feel to you. Put your wheels on the bike. Now get on your bike. And now as best you can, don't worry about the headset being loose and there's no chain on your bike or anything. You can lean against the bench if you want. Now you'll need to make sure that your levers are in the spot that you want them to be. These are slightly different shape than your Shimano ones. If you put the band in the same spot as your Shimano ones, then you should be very, very close to the right spot for you. But if you need to make some micro adjustments, slightly up or slightly further forward or whatever, then make the adjustments now before you connect up your hydraulics. Now that your shift lever is in the near perfect position, you can do the hydraulics. Slide on the compression nut, followed by the olive, and then push in the barb with your fingers as hard as you can. Press in the barb with the tool. Make sure the barb is square to the hose, and remove the tool. Again, have a rag on hand for any brake fluid spillage. Here I'm just pegging it to the handlebars. Remove the plastic stopper from the shifter's hydraulic connection point. And boating grease ensures a good seal at this joint. Paint a thin layer around the olive and the thread of the compression nut. Push the hose into the shifter, make sure the compression nut is square to the thread, and tighten the compression nut up. Spray and wipe with isopropyl alcohol, just in case there's any brake fluid spillage or smudges around the handlebar and lever area. If any brake fluid gets between the shifter body and the lever hood, then you'll have to get under there and clean that up as well. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Give the brake lever a few squeezes, have a careful look and make sure there's no leakage at the joint. All going well, you should have some brakes. If you need to bleed the system or top it up a bit with a bit more oil like I do, then the bleed port is under the lever hood about halfway on the body. It's really awkward to peel the lever hood back because it's in the middle. There it is, the bleed port screw. You might need to hold the lever hood back while you undo the port screw. Here I'm using a 4mm Allen key. Don't use a flathead screwdriver, you might pierce through the lever hood itself. Remove the port screw. Using the brass adapter which comes with your wheel top kit, insert a plastic tube. Make sure it's firm fitting because you don't want any brake fluid leaking. Screw the adapter into the port and a funnel on the other end of the plastic tube. We won't go through the whole bleeding process, but just get as many bubbles out of the system as you can. Then put that bleed port screw back in and wipe off any brake fluid spillage. While we're talking about servicing, another thing you can do while your wheels are out and your chain's off, particularly if you had to take your bottom bracket out to pull your cables through, is the bottom bracket. So if that needs to be done, how's a chance to do it? Well, it's available, easy to do. That one doesn't need it, it spins nice and it's smooth, so it's fine. Another thing you can do while your bike's apart is give it a bit of a clean. Particularly when your derailers are off, you can get to spots which the derailers usually hide. So behind the dropouts and around the cranks area here. So a good opportunity to give your bike a bit of a touch up. Another thing you can do while the derailers are not on is put your rear wheel in, get a hanger tool and check to see if your hanger's nice and straight. If you haven't got one of these tools, it's certainly worthwhile begging or borrowing one from a friend. So while your derailleur is missing, check the alignment of your rear hanger. There's no point having a nice new derailleur on trying to align your gears if your hanger's out, because you won't get your gears aligned. So your hanger must be nice and straight. For your wheel top front derailleur, you'll need a hanger on your frame. See, there's nothing to wrap around the frame, it just hangs with one bolt. So if you haven't got a hanger that's built onto your bike or brazed onto your frame, you'll need to get a hanger. So if you've got a round tube, you can get round band clamp braze on front derailleur hangers. Okay, we'll put the rear derailleur on. Now first, on the hanger bolt, put a little bit of grease on the thread there before you screw it into the hanger. And also make sure that this beveled ledge here is resting against the B screw before installing on your hanger. Once you've tightened the hanger bolt up, the rear derailleur should hang loosely, but should only have a bees whisker slack sideways. Before you mount your front derailleur, take the opportunity to plug any holes where your mechanical cables come through. For instance, here there's two holes, one for a Di2, one for a mechanical cable. So I've put plugs, one in each. If you're wondering what sort of plugs, you can get them on AliExpress. You can buy a packet like this just for a couple of dollars. Little press-in plugs. It's my little collection of them. 5mm Allen key, take out the hanger or the holding bolt. You won't need to grease this one because there's some thread locker on there anyway. So simply put the derailleur on the hanger, line it up. Don't tighten the bolt all the way up yet. You notice there's a sticker here, a little red sticker, and it's got 3mm written on it with a picture of little teeth there. So you align the bottom of this outer cage so that it's 3mm above the top of the teeth on your largest chainring. You can either use your sticker or you can do it by eye. So around about 2 to 3mm is fine. Also from above the derailleur, look down and make sure both the outer and inner cages are parallel to the chainring line. So nice and straight. Once those measurements are lined up, tighten the holding bolt. And then just check again. You should now also have a hole where your rear mechanical gear cable came out of the frame. This frame had a hollow plug, so use a solid plug to stop moisture getting into your rear stay. And it looks good too. Now before we put the wheels and the chain on and line everything up, just sort of talk about the brakes. Now I'm using the Ultegra ones, I've left them on. The Shimano Ultegras front and rear, including the old hoses, managed to get that all working quite fine with the wheel top levers. So I did that just to show you that it is possible and everything works fine. So you don't need to use the wheel top caliper set if you don't want to, if you want to use your others. If they're not already, put your wheels on, thread your chain onto the drivetrain. It's getting exciting now, it's nearing completion. Now that your shifters, rear derailleur and front derailleur are physically attached to the bike, it's time to synchronise the gears. Assuming you already downloaded the app on your phone and you paired the devices even before you put it on the bike, straight out of the box. And why? Because you can have a bit of a fiddle around and see them work on their own. Now I'm not going to go through everything, how to set up your gears on the app. I'll let you learn the app for yourself because you're going to have to anyway. So with the app on your phone, you press the little Bluetooth symbol on the top right hand corner there, move your bike, wake it up and it will pair itself to the gears. Now what you do is first of all you go to your settings down the bottom here, equipment debugging, and then replace cassette, because you're going to set what sort of cassette it is. At the moment mine's on 11S for 11 speed, so if you've got 9, 10 or 11, so tap that. So go to this and set how many sprockets you've got there. So if you've got 9, you press 9. My case here, 11, which is probably most people. So 11S, you press that, which is already on, and you press Sure, and it will be attached. Next, you go to fine tuning. Now it's got all the 11 gears there and the distance between each sprocket. Now there are pre-done settings already on there, and that's for the Shimano spacing of the cassette for 11 speed. So you just press one click recovery, that'll do, just to make sure, and sets the derailleur. So now that should line up perfectly. Now I know this one doesn't, it's slightly off because not every wheel or not every frame hanger is in the same position. This is a bees whisker off. So I needed to adjust my individual settings individually for each cog. In your case, it might work fine. So you can go and try it with your lever now and shift up and down. It's slightly off. So because I clicked the recovery, it's reset the rear derailleur to standard Shimano spacing 11 speed, and mine is slightly off because of the hanger. So I'm going to reset it individually. I'll show you how to do that. If yours works fine, then that's good. The next thing to do for your rear derailleur is to set the limit screws. Small Allen key, and this screw limits how far out toward the wheel spokes the derailleur will go, and this screw limits how far out toward the frame stay the derailleur will go. So you don't want your rear derailleur to go up and over the first gear and into your spokes, and you don't want it to come too far down across and the chain will end up between your smallest sprocket and the frame, or chew away at your frame. You don't want that. So that's what the limit screws are on the rear derailleur. So set them so you don't have any trouble. To fine tune your rear sprockets, you start off on the smallest sprocket, but you can't get the chain down to the smallest sprocket because the system won't allow you to go on a small chainring at the front and a small sprocket at the back. So you have to go to the large sprocket at the front. So try and shift your front derailleur. If your front derailleur won't shift the chain all the way up to the largest chainring, then you need to adjust your front derailleur first. Now you're on the big chainring, shift down onto the smallest sprocket at the back. Hopefully it will go there and it won't go any further because you've set your limit screws, so it'll be on. Now if it sounds smooth, go up to the next sprocket. Use the paddles on the shifter. So go up, the second one up, that's okay. Third one's okay. Aha, the fourth one, there we go, not quite in gear properly. So onto the page with individual sprocket tuning and select the fourth one. As you can see, it's 590. So we're going to go down, decrease the value, try about 480 and see how that sounds. Going back to the all sprockets page, and you can see the fourth gear is now 480. 2, 3, 4, that's much better. 5, that's good. 6, okay, so the seventh one, it wants to go up to the seventh, but it can't. 7's too low, so I need to increase the size of 7. Now for the front derailleur, there are 2 limit screws. This one here adjusts how far inward the derailleur goes, and that little one up there adjusts how far out the derailleur goes. Start off on the small chainring and the largest sprocket at the back. In this position, the chain should be within 1 millimeter of the inside plate of the front derailleur. So very, very close, but not quite touching. If the inner plate's too far away from the chain, in other words, the derailleur has gone too far in, then you can bring the derailleur out by adjusting this limit screw here. So wind it clockwise until you get that approximately 1 millimeter or very, very close to. Once you've got that inner limit set on the small chainring, then come out and do the outer limit on the larger chainring. So change up to your big chainring, which means you've got to come down to your smallest sprocket on the rear. Now it needs to be similar to the inner limit. The chain should be about 1 millimeter from the outer plate on your derailleur. If the derailleur comes too far out, it'll force your chain off, or it'll hit the inside of your crank. So you want it to clear your crank arm as well as hold the chain on the large chainring. You can physically limit how far the front derailleur comes out with the top limit screw up here, which is a smaller Allen key. It's about a 1.5. So you wind that in, and so that the derailleur doesn't force your chain off over the top of your chainring on the outside. You don't want that. If you can't get your chain to jump up to your large chainring, even though it's nothing to do with the limit screws, then it's probably to do with the derailleur app itself. So go into your app and you can adjust how far out the derailleur comes. So select Equipment Debugging, then Initial Calibration. Down the bottom of the page you'll see an illustration of the smaller and larger chainrings. This arrow will move your front derailleur towards the small chainring, and this arrow how far out towards your large chainring. If you put a finger or your thumb on the front derailleur there and the chain together and you push the arrow up, you can feel the derailleur move just ever so small increments. Don't forget, if you need to adjust your B screw, that's here. So that'll adjust the distance between the top jockey wheel and the teeth on your cassette there. If it's too close, then it'll make a noise all the time, clinkety 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 clink. If it's too far away, it'll be quiet, but it won't change gears efficiently. So you've got to get it just right. And you don't have to stick to your app on your phone to fine-tune your gears. You can use the paddles on your shifters. You can look that one up for yourself, but I think you hold both pedals either side for more than 3 seconds, and then you use this side here to fine-tune your gears. Look that one up. Another thing, when you're fine-tuning your gears in a stand like this, you're pedaling and you're changing your gears, you might find that you might not get one sprocket or a couple of sprockets quite right. No matter how much you tune it, fine-tune it, it still sounds just a little bit clunky or not quite in gear. Well, that's because you're doing in a stand and there's almost no pressure applied to the chain, and so it's not quite meshing properly with your cassette there, the chain and the cassette. Whereas when you're on the road, there's a lot more force going through and the chain is forced to interlock with the cassette. So you'll find that it'll be noisier on the stand, but not when you're actually riding your bike. The other thing is, if you've got an oiled chain with oil on your chain, then it will be quieter than with a waxed chain. This is a waxed chain, and so hence when you go and change your gears and fine tune it, it'll be a lot noisier. So don't worry about that. It's what's riding on the road is important. But you do your fine tuning the best you can, and then you'll be right. When you're on the large chainring and the smallest sprocket at the back, if you go down to the smallest chainring straight away, the rear automatically jumps up 2 sprockets to the nearest equivalent gear ratio. This has 2 benefits. First, so as your chain doesn't have such a bend in it as going from the small here to way out to the small one on the back, that means your chain line will be like that. So that's no good for the chain. It'll wear the chain out really quickly on the outer plates. And the other reason is the chain is likely to rub on the inside surface of your front chainring because of that line. So by moving 2 sprockets up, it keeps the chain a little bit straighter and therefore saves those 2 problems. Now this system also has auto trim. So if you're on the big chainring and a small sprocket at the back, if you start going up the sprockets to the bigger, by the time you get to the 5th one from the bottom, the derailleur will move in just a fraction so you don't get chain rub on the inside cage of that derailleur. And the same when you're on the small chainring, if you come down from the big sprocket at the back and go down, 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 by the time it reaches the 7th sprocket at the back, then the derailleur will move out a fraction so that the chain doesn't rub on the outer cage. Now if that just seems a lot of gobbledygook and numbers, it's all too confusing, don't worry about it. It's automatic anyway, it's in the system, you can't change it. Now, if this whole setting up the gears business is all too confusing for you, then take a break. maybe even the next day come back to it, because the more you get to use the app, the more you'll learn about it, and the more you'll be able to make changes as they come and make your gears more refined. And in the future, if you want to go, say, more gears at the back, so you want to go 13 speed when it comes, then when you do change, you'll know how to do it in the app. I know it's not easy because it's not in English very well at the moment, but if you take your time to learn it, you'll be right. Right, as far as this bike's concerned now, all the gears work fine. Just need to tune up the A headset, put some handlebar tape on, and go for a few short rides to make sure everything's fine, and then onto the big rides with the lads. Just finally tightening the levers. I find I've taken these lever hoods back and forth a few times, putting levers on and getting them just right, and I find the rubbers quite good. They don't go loose and they're very forgiving, and they fit back nice and tightly, nicely into place. I've had problems with the Shimanos in the past, as I said, that they go loose, especially over time, but so far they're fitting really nice and tight, and they've got nice big chunky parts that fit into the body of the lever underneath as well as on top here, so that's a good thing as well. Got to make sure the levers are exactly right. It's not much more annoying than having one lever slightly in or slightly higher or lower than the other. If you've got a black seat, you've got to have black handlebar tape. Before you put your bar tape on, I've done one side, get some isopropyl alcohol and clean around the lever, just in case there's a little bit of spillage of the mineral oil. Where are we? Paper towel or a clean rag. Make sure there's none under the lever hood as well. This is the first time I've ever used this brand of handlebar tape. It's really nice. Got it from AliExpress, but instead of buying the cheap one, went a little bit better. I put one side on and it's really nice. It stretches nicely as you put it on, and it feels rubbery and grippy, and also it's got some grip on there as well. So it's very nice. Nice thick, wide glue tape. Now, with your front and rear derailleurs, they move on a parallelogram, so there's at least 4 hinges that move all at the same time. That's how they move and keep in one direction. That moves and keeps that derailleur cage in line. Now, quite often with 4 hinges, there'll be a slight movement, a slight slackness. Well, I tried to move this, the front derailleur, and there's no movement whatsoever, nothing, not a bee's whisker, either this way or this way. So that's good for the front derailleur. And the rear one, there's no movement from the hanger to the derailleur, there's no movement in the parallelogram, and there's no movement on the jockey wheel cage to the derailleur body. There's nothing. You can actually move the bottom jockey wheel, it moves the whole derailleur just a fraction, but it's very, very strong. So that makes for a very strong and precise derailleur when it moves. Nice to see in the build quality of the shifters, metal in the hydraulic connector. So where the hose comes in and you've got that bolt that screws into the shifter, that receptor in the shifter is actually metal, and so that makes for a stronger connection. I've actually seen quite a few Shimano ones cracked because they're plastic. You screw it too tight and crack, and then you've done your shifter, and you either got to get it professionally carbon repaired or you can buy a new shifter, expensive. So this one, at least it's metal. Good move there, WheelTop. One big tick for this WheelTop system is you can use any cassette you want to. So not just Rota, Campagnolo, SRAM, Shimano, whatever. You can actually use any generic one as well. You know those ultralight ones you get from Taiwan, wherever they're made? They're really, really light, and you can put them on your bike, but they may not line up exactly with Shimano or SRAM or whatever system you've got. With this system, the WheelTop, it doesn't matter. You can line it up with any cassette you want to, because you can micro adjust for each individual sprocket. So that is a brilliant plus. Another really good thing about this WheelTop system is available in the rim brake. So it doesn't mean you need to stick to your conventional caliper like this. You can use V brakes, U brakes, and your cable pull hydraulic calipers as well. So if it's got a cable pull, then chances are you're going to be able to use it on your bike. Something to mention about the jockey wheels on the rear derailleur. Now, jockey wheels usually last a long time. However, if and when you need to replace them, you can, because the pins through the middle and the width of the jockey wheel is standard for Shimano. So if you need to, you can replace them with Shimano jockey wheels, or any jockey wheels that will go on a Shimano derailleur for that reason. And that's a whole lot, including some of your fancy pants ones. If you want to replace them with some ceramic bearing jockey wheels, you can go ahead and do that. Or you can replace it with the whole system like this, the whole cage. This one will come off. You unscrew it with an Allen key at the back and replace it with one of these if you want to. So just make sure you get the right connection for that. There's a few different types and then you'll be right. There's a few stickers on the derailleurs you can take off now. This one says this is your charging port. Now you know where it is. That one says this is your trimming screw to adjust the limits. You know where that is. And this one also at the top here on the front derailleur is the charging port as well. Well, hopefully you got some good pointers out of this video to help you put the WheelTop system onto your bike. As I mentioned before, as far as the app's concerned, WheelTop are making genuine efforts to make it easily to understand in English with their translation. So be patient, take your time to get to know it and you'll be right. For further help, put your queries in the comments below. Either I or someone out there should be able to help you along your way, putting the WheelTop system, getting it working properly on your bike. If you haven't got yourself the WheelTop kit yet, you're thinking of purchasing it, I'll put a referral link in the description below and that will give you 3% off the total price. Now there's only one more thing to do, and that is ride the bike and see how it all goes. So I'll do that and let you know in the next video. By that time I would have done at least 20 rides. I'll be very familiar with it and be able to give you a good idea of how it's all performing. Okay, till then, we'll keep riding and we'll see you soon.